I was a teenage vampire. Our hearts. I was a teenage vampire. Our hearts. I was a teenage vampire.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Once upon a time, your humble narrator, moi, was a member of the largest live-action role-playing society in the world, the Camarilla. The Camarilla ran games based on White Wolf's World of Darkness, you know, back when it was good, before the new World of Darkness. And I was a member for a very long time, but I left 10 years ago now, which is scary to think of. And I still know a lot of people who are involved in the society, and as a result, I still often run into their drama, or I witness public discussions about changes they've made to the society. I left 10 years ago when it was getting shit, when the drama was outweighing the fun of playing, and when the bureaucracy was outweighing the fun of playing, and from everything I see, things haven't gotten any better. I joined originally in the 90s, I'm thinking around 94, 95, thereabouts. Though I'd been running Vampire LARPs since before then, that's how we kind of got recruited in. It sucked in and absorbed our existing vampire game into theirs. And the culture was very different then. I mean, White Wolf and its fans and so on have always been very progressive, to the point of putting female pronouns in their books, something that's always driven me mad, or the ghost of my English teacher that resides in my head has driven him mad for ages. So it was kind of ahead of the curve on all this hyper PC stuff, though it didn't really happen to the same extent. I can recall a few incidents. At a mage LARP, I was playing a Cult Ecstasy mage, and we got into a ruck with another chantry of mages who had very different ideas about how to do things, and I caused one of the enemy mages, who happened to be a woman, to have basically an aggravated damage orgasm, and boy, you wouldn't believe the fuss about that, even though it's just roleplay. It wasn't even described as anything particular, but you know, that was some kind of major violation, even though it's all play and in paradigm for the mage and all the rest of it. I never really understood what all the fuss was about, but that lot were always a bit weird. So, you know, this kind of thing was always going on, but there was always a sort of tension between the horror aspects of the game and the freedom of expression, the free to play how you want, and going the other way, making sure everyone was comfortable. And the ideas that we had to deal with that were things like fade to black and codes of conduct and stuff, which often got very intrusive in a way that is reminiscent of the way that, you know, convention policy, anti-harassment policies have become intrusive. You know, some things made sense, like we in England made certain rules about, well, you shouldn't really play characters with an IRA background because, you know, people over here have had their families blown up and so on, and it's a bit intrusive. I went along with it at the time. My views have changed since. I'd probably say it was okay now, but, you know, we would talk to them about it and make sure it was handled in as sensitive a manner as possible, that kind of thing. So why do I bring all this up? Well, a few things have kind of come across my radar recently about things in the organisation. Like, they've banned sort of rape plot lines from people's backgrounds. And I didn't really understand why, but then recently I read a Medium post by a woman who's been in the organisation, whichever organisation it is now, I don't even know anymore, for the last 4 years or so, went public with a bunch of complaints about harassment and so on. I don't know this person from Adam, I don't know the situation, I know absolutely nothing about it, but some of the stuff that they brought up made me think about the way the organisation used to be and the direction it was headed when I left. So I don't particularly want to comment on this individual case, but I want to just pick out a few things and kind of bookmark how attitudes have changed, even within a kind of hyper-progressive atmosphere that White Wolf always represented. Okay, I'm going to be referring to the article here, so excuse me if I turn away to look a bit. It's not that I don't love you. So what seems to have set all this off is that this person's character perhaps even, it's not even certain, was raped. There was something, some writing or something on a list that appeared to be about a character raping their character. I don't know how graphic it was, I don't know anything. But this appears to have been the final straw for them. And on top of that, they then piled in a whole bunch of other stuff, apparently, to try and build up some sort of complaint. So, like, comments they got, like they only got an in-game position because they're good looking, an Archon, an assistant to a Justica. That people gave them back rubs without consent. People touched them without consent. That they were grabbed and hugged by people they didn't know just because they were hugging people near them. Asked by men if they needed help getting out of their costume. Followed back to the hotel room. Responses, "I'll be in my bunk," to pictures that they posted on social media. Sorry. And most recently, this sexually violent post on this list, which people thought their character was the subject of. And someone kissing them forcibly. Now this seems like a whole bunch of different stuff, all kind of pushed together. And then the rest is about their responses and their feelings around that. So, okay, let me take you back. Diddly-doo, diddly-doo, diddly-doo. Alright, here's the important thing to remember about LARPs, about conventions, about big gaming events of all kinds. They're nerd prom. They are the nerdy equivalent of nightclubs. They've always been a meat market to one degree or another, and role-playing has always provided a kind of cover for people to flirt with each other and sort of see if each other's interested sexually and so on, even get a little bit of sexual roleplay in there, all that kind of shit. This is always how it has been. The important part then is consent, I guess. I mean, what do you expect when you get a bunch of horny teens through 40-somethings, you know, together en masse, all in their best sexy goth outfits, you know, everyone playing characters which are often way more confident than they are, way more sexual than they are, and rooted in a background, largely, when we're talking about vampire, where the whole thing was an allegory for rape and sex in the first place. You know, whether you're looking at Carmilla or Dracula or Vampiros Lesbos or whatever else. I mean, that's always what it's been to an extent. An excuse to go out, get dressed up, have fun, flirt, you know, and try and meet someone. I met my partner through Vampire LARP. A lot of other people have as well. You know, this is something that happens, nerdy and embarrassing as it is. So that's the kind of background and atmosphere that you have to consider when you consider people's actions within that context. So let's look at these things. Okay, one character raping another character, even if this was to do with this person. This is roleplay, it's not something you have to read. There was always a fade to black rule, and I'm sure things have gotten tighter since then. So I have a problem understanding what the issue is there. Bad things happen to people's characters. They get tortured, they get killed, they get mentally dominated, they get blood-bound into slavery to each other. You know, they get their limbs hacked off, they get twisted and shaped into monsters by vicissitude, they get forced to kill their loved ones in order to erode their humanity. All kinds of horrible shit happens, but we're going to draw a line at rape. Yeah, this takes me back to my infamous blog post in defense of rape, you know, that this is a valid and functional story tool. It might not always be used well, it might be used crassly and horribly, but it's still a thing that happens, a horrific thing that happens. It's perfectly in suiting and in place in a horror game like Vampire, which, like I said, you know, Dracula is pretty much an allegory for rape anyway. And you look at their other games, werewolf in particular, it probably should be a theme in that. I mean, you look at the Black Spiral Dancers and other evil forces at work there. You know, this is horrible shit that should happen in game. Okay, so it's shit that should happen, but you don't necessarily have to indulge every jot and tittle, every moment of that happening. You have to fade to black, draw a line under it. Okay, we know this happened. That's all we need to know. So how is that harassment? How is storytelling harassment? And if this act is too much, too far, then what about the emotional abuse, or the mental domination, or the blood bonds, or the other things, the twisting, the torture, the crippling, and so on, that may well go on in a horror game? Really, what's the difference, functionally, when it comes down to it? This is all horrific shit that you can all draw a line under and say, no, I don't want to go into detail, we can just accept that it's happened, and it's horrible, and move on. How is that harassment? What is the complaint here? I mean, this appears to be the final straw in a bunch of other stuff that's happened. I get that, but individually, what is wrong with that in a role-playing context? If you want to take it broader to make this video more relevant to more people, what is wrong with that kind of horrible shit happening in games or stories in the first place? I mean, look at this other stuff. Okay, you get told you only got in-game positions because you're good looking. I don't know if things have changed, but that was definitely, absolutely, certainly how things went down when I was part of the society. It's not something I did, but it's something I heard other people admit to. It's something I saw happen multiple times, that they would often elevate players that they liked or were interested in to positions in or outside of the role-playing part, because they wanted to spend more time with them, because they wanted to appeal to them, because they wanted to seem more attractive to them, because they wanted to do favours to them, because they were attracted to them. It's something that happens. People whinging about it, sure, it's not nice to hear, but it's something that definitely used to happen, probably still happens in workplaces, happens wherever you go. You know, the pretty people get the opportunities. Sorry, not nice to hear, but it's true. Being told that might be impolitic, but so what? Try and stamp that out. Speak against it. Check what's going on. Ask whether that's why you were given the position. That doesn't seem to me to be harassment. Back rubs and things. I mean, I was creeped out by some of the stuff that went on when I was there. It was scritches at the time. I found that a little bit. But the people who did it didn't seem to be bothered by it, and if someone did it to you, all you had to say was, I'm not really into that, could you not please? And that was an end to it. I mean, do people not say, no, I'm not interested anymore? Are people so unassertive that they can't say no? And how is someone supposed to know that you don't want something? It's that fine line of consent, verbal, non-verbal, but you've got to tell people if you don't like something, surely. Goes for the touching and the hugging. I mean, people were always very huggy. I wasn't particularly huggy, but you know, if it was a pretty girl, might give it a pass. Other things here are just flirtation. Need a hand getting out of that costume, or you know, I'll be in my bunk. It's just a joke, a common joke online whenever anyone remotely attractive posts a picture of themselves. Pretty much, that seems a weird thing to get upset by. Now, being followed back to your hotel room. That's sinister. And being kissed without consent. That's sinister. The rest of this just seems to be a pile-on. But, you know, contextually, it's within the society as I remember it, the kind of meat market nightclub atmosphere, people, you know, hot, attractive people in costumes around. You would expect a bunch of flirtation and so on, and it's basically harmless, most of it. So it's hard to see where this complaint is coming from, apart from those couple of things. So why is the rest on there? I don't get it, frankly. I don't think a lot of people from my time would particularly get it either. So let's draw a line under this and use it as an example of what I think is a big problem. Okay, so put yourself in the position of someone in charge of a convention or an officer in the society who's supposed to deal with out-of-character issues that people have. How the hell do you deal with this situation? You've got an individual who feels harassed, but very little in what they're complaining about is actually either illegal or even a breach of anything to do with this, to do with the society that you're a part of. Much of it is not even happening at your events, at your conventions, or on your email lists, or your chat rooms, or anything like that. A lot of it's happening away from that, and a lot of it is nothing that's illegal. There's flirtatious comments and so on, but frankly, so what? Those don't constitute harassment, however harassed this person feels. And the only things that have happened on your watch are role-playing that may or may not have anything to do with this person, and is role-playing, which is what your entire society is about and for, and you run horror games, and misbehaviour at a convention that you got no witnesses for now, should have been complained about at the convention. I mean, what are you supposed to do in this situation? If you listen and believe, any number of other people are going to be brought up on things that they did that have nothing to do with you or your society, are completely legal, are just flirtation that apparently has added up to a pile-on onto this person. So what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to get rid of half a dozen people that flirt slightly inappropriately with someone in order to appease one person? If you don't take their complaint seriously, maybe they're going to walk, and you're going to have this bad reputation as harbouring harassers or whatever. But if you're going to be fair, if you're going to be scrupulous, if you're going to be ethical, there's basically fuck all you can do with this. Are you going to bring in new rules to ban certain kinds of play and background and so on in your games? And then you start eroding the very reason that everyone has come together. This is just a stark example of how these kind of policies and so on don't work, and how difficult it is to navigate around them, and how any serious harassment is a job for the police, not for some guy who just, does book taking and takes membership fees on his weekend. How are you supposed to deal with this stuff? And look at this. Look how much that atmosphere has changed. You've gone from a playful, slightly sexually charged night out for nerds, and there were problems, but we used to deal with them then and there on the spot. I remember a girl getting basically wedgied by this guy, and he got cornered by 4 or 5 dudes immediately and told not to let it happen again, and it didn't. So are people just so socially crippled that they can't say no to people when they're not interested in something? Because that's really all it would take, as far as I can make out. Are they so reliant on outside authority to come in and deal with their problems for them that they need this to be done? Can't people deal with this by themselves? And what is a society, is a hobby, whatever, supposed to do about this, especially when it threatens to erode the very kind of reasons that they come together in the first place? I don't fucking know. I don't know. All I can do here is kind of take stock of a very particular example of what appears to be a cultural change. It's not for the better. The way we used to deal with things, frankly, seems a lot better. People had the strength to say, no, I'm not interested. People would intervene and sort shit out without going to an authority. It just didn't need to be done most of the time, and that was better. It helped people learn to adult. I don't know the specifics of this situation. All I've got to go on is this post, and it's completely from one point of view, and from what I can see, there's not a lot of actual substance to it, which is going to make me look like a cunt, I'm sure, and I'm sure someone's going to call me up on it and say, oh, you're excusing harassment behaviour, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to take an objective, distant, ethical viewpoint on it and say what has actually been done here. That is wrong. Some of it's unpleasant, some of it is genuinely wrong, the stalking and the kissing, but the rest of it doesn't appear to have any substance. If you think it does, explain to me why someone can't just go, no, I'm not interested, or please stop doing that, and that be an end to it. Because that's how it used to be. I never thought at the time that my generation would be some kind of shining example of adult behaviour. We were Generation X. We just didn't care about anything. But looking at this, what the fuck am I supposed to make of that? And like I said, it's just a perfect example of how these kind of policies and things and expecting people to intervene when you got nothing just doesn't work. It's just a frustration and annoyance for everybody. I don't know. I don't have a solution here. I don't have anything to offer other than an observation that shit has changed and not for the better. And since I'm repeating myself, I'm gonna fuck off now. Zang.